Hi all, and this is the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. Tonight is April the 27th.
Good morning, Vietnam! Sticking you an honor up your arm.
Hi all, and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name's Thomas Williams, and that was sticking your world order up your arse, and I'm sure all the listeners will agree with that with 1000%. Right, this is the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. We have an email, which is if you want to ask questions or pass comments on the show, it's truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. We're available on the Spreaker, user number 8955881. If you want to watch it or listen to it rather live. And we also have the People's Club donations website, which is called thepeoplesclub.org. So you want to go and donate to the foundation. I may have more news on that in the coming weeks. We've also got a YouTube channel, the Tommy Williams channel, so that generally gets archived on the Friday or the Saturday morning. So all the previous shows are up there. Right, it's been a rather strange week, very quiet. And it's quiet for many reasons. There's no intel tonight. There is intel, but none of it can be released as yet, because certain things are ongoing. Certain people have had enough of certain other people, and actions are underway. I will not state what those actions are, but that's the way why things are going the way they are at the moment, and it's all very, very quiet, and it's all behind the scenes. I know some would like it out up front. Well, we've had quite a lot this year. You know, there's been more news this year already. What was near a third of the way through the year, we've probably had more news and outings and disclosures and discoveries this year than the whole of last year, which was expected. And in the main, most people have managed to absorb it. And also, this show's generating an awful lot of interest. I think we've added about 200 members in the past 3 days. So suddenly this show is getting a lot of recognition, not only in America, because a lot of the members may get some of the admins to do a check, but I reckon we must be represented by 140 countries now. Some of the people that are applying are from India and Pakistan and all even small islands and all the countries in Africa. So the message is getting out, and it's not just my show. There's many other shows saying the same thing, but people around the world are starting to wake up to the reality of what's going on. They've had enough of the fun and games that the cabal of the Illuminati and some of the ET groups have been playing on us, the tricks and the mind games, the torture, which we've heard about in recent shows. And people are now starting to stand up and say, enough's enough. When that reaches a tipping point, then it will be enough. They know they can't compete with us. They may have weapons and they may have money. You can't beat the will of the people. They know that. And that is why they're playing their continual mind games, messing around with frequencies, trying to disrupt people, attacking people, targeting people, taking people out, all to control the narrative. But it's running away from them, and it's slipping away at an increasing pace. They can't keep the lid on disclosure anymore. Small d or capital. It's coming out. I was watching a programme the other night. 28 countries have released their ET files. And it's all the big countries as well. So if ETs don't exist, why are these countries releasing it? Can it be to be mess with our heads? Some of it will be. Of that I've no doubt. Or to provide a distraction for what's going on. And there's enough distractions going on. Thankfully, so far, we've had no ritual by fire incident, because we're in that time. We've still got another 4 days to go to come out of that particular ritual period, which is the 19th of April through the 1st of May, which is Beltane Day, pagan festivals, and let's have rituals to sacrifice to the gods, which are not human, as we all know, or some of us do. So there's a lot going on, mainly behind the scenes. Like I said, I would have hoped by now we would have had more out in the open. Not necessarily for the alternative community, because we've had bundles out in the open over the last 12 months, but more for the general public. But given the increase in members on the page, and it is a closed group, so it's not as if people can be passing and just join. It's a closed group because of the fun and games we've had in the past, and so it's word of mouth. And the likes of what's being put out in these shows is encouraging people from all over the world to come forward and say, I'm going to throw my hat into that ring, and we want to take this what was once a behemoth. It is no more. The financial aspect is on a very slippery slope. One of the news items will cover that. So it's going on, you know, and people are getting tired. None more so than me, you know, because we all want things to happen. Sadly, too many fell for the Trump promises. And here we are 100 days later, and we're not seeing evidence of the swamp cleaning that was promised. In fact, we've seen a number of U-turns already, including another one this week. And it all goes back to what I stated 4 years ago in Universal Voice. Unless you provide a platform for people to perform on, you're wasting your time appointing anybody. Mr. Trump is in an awkward position, because whether he wants to do anything for the American people is kind of irrelevant. We've stated this many times, or I have anyway. But when you have 39 levels above the president, 39 groups of people dictating policy, what chance does anybody have? What chance did Obama have? Whether he's good, bad or indifferent, we all know idiot Bush Jr. was corrupt as hell, still is. But it doesn't make a difference. It's this State Department shadow government. That's the problem, always has been. And until we get sufficient people with force and clout to do something, they will always remain there. And so consequently, the swamp cleaning will get blocked, and also any improvements in people's lives will also get blocked. And this is what we're dealing with. Right, we're going to go into some news. Like I said, there's not much intel, or there's no intel this week as yet, but I may get some during the first hour, so we never know. I may be able to release some things, but this show will be a bit more sedate than the previous ones, and a bit of fun as well. So, right, talking about election, the Federation of Teachers, nice terminology for a group of teachers, that, the Federation, they're all very German. A faculty union for staffers at the Shoreline Community College in Washington State is asking members to consider awarding extra credit to any of their students who attend an up-and-coming Trump protest rally. Extra credits for kids for turning up at the Trump protest rally. According to the college reform, the union is encouraging professors to invite their students to attend a day of resistance event and perhaps turn it into a class outing. You know, there was a lot of anti-Trump rallies over the past few months. Many thousands, tens of thousands of women, mainly. But where were those people in 2000 when idiot Bush stole the election? But where was the protest rallies then? Where were those people in 2004 when Bush Jr. was re-elected on warmongering policies? This is what I can't understand, you know. Trump's like Marmite, you either like him or you loathe him. But it doesn't equate to all these rallies, and you've got school boards giving kids credit to turn up at the rally. You know, I can think of 2 presidents in the last 16 years that should have had those rallies, given how corrupt they were. And yet Trump's less than 100 days in, and they're wanting him out. Doesn't really make much sense, does it? But it's kind of ironic that everyone is now suddenly trying to politicise everything. And I think that's a direct response to the fact that the popular vote in the last election of 47% was by the people who decided, we're not playing your game anymore. They already know the youth are not interested in their game, and so this is one way of trying to induce them into the system. Hopefully the kids will see it that way and go the opposite way. So an unusual move, but perhaps not. It may be a sign of recognising who the problem is. The entire US Senate this week was being called to the White House for a briefing on North Korea. Washington has become increasingly concerned at North Korean missile and nuclear tests. I don't think it's Washington, I think it's Langley, in my opinion. And North Korea's threats to its neighbours and to the US. The briefing, involving 100 senators as well as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Defence Secretary James Mattis, was held yesterday. China, and North Korea's main ally, has called for restraint from all sides. China's call came in a phone conversation between President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump last Sunday. Mr. Xi urged all parties to maintain restraint and avoid actions that would increase tensions. For his part, Mr. Trump said North Korea's continued belligerence was destabilising the Korean peninsula. Well, when you've got South Korea and cabal minions in that country, if you were living in North Korea, would you want weapons to be able to defend or fire back? The problem's not North Korea. The problem is the countries that have the weapons. because then they become the bullies. And this is why the 6 main nations with nuclear weapons are the bullies of the world. Germany, France, Britain, America, Israel. They tried desperately hard to stop India and Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan was being funded by Langley, and so India decided they would get weapons, and then there's the proliferation. Of course, then you've got the other backdoor entity of, if countries need weapons, that they have to buy from American companies. We all know who they are: Raytheon, Halliburton, the same people, same neocon warmongers, all making money by being on the board. Mr. Darth Vader himself, Cheney, Halliburton. So North Korea are not the problem. It's all the other countries that have got weapons that are the problem. We should not have nuclear weapons or any type of planetary destroying weapon on this planet. If Russia, China, Britain, Israel and America gave up their nuclear weapons or EMP weapons, would not Pakistan, India and the other countries also do the same? But whilst those countries can go around bullying other countries into going along with their policy and raping and pillaging their countries, then sadly it doesn't matter which country it is, whether it's North Korea, Venezuela, Argentina, or even a small island like Fiji. If you were a native of those countries, you would want weapons also, but you know what comes next. You show any sign of weakness and you get raided, like Syria, like Iraq, like Kuwait, like Afghanistan. The list goes on and on. None of those have got nuclear weapons. Britain this week went for the first time in history, or since the industrial age anyway, of not using coal to generate electricity. And the energy provider said last Friday's lack of coal usage was a watershed moment. Britain's longest continuous energy period without coal until now was just 19 hours, which was first achieved last May and again on Thursday, so it's a test. And the government plans to phase out Britain's last coal plants by 2025 in order to cut carbon emissions. Friday is thought to be the first time the nation has not used coal to generate electricity since 1882. And Mr. O'Hara of the National Grid is said to have the first working day without coal since the start of the Industrial Revolution is a watershed moment in how our energy system is changing. Yes. So their idea to save the planet is to get rid of coal plants. And of course Britain is deciding to build nuclear power stations. Like, that's really saving the planet, isn't it? And let's not forget that they destroy people, they destroy towns, they destroy villages, they destroy cities, and they destroy countries to build oil pipelines. How about we go a day without oil? How about we go a year and a decade without oil and have some real clean energy? That's been going on since the 80s or late 70s, trying to shut the coal mines down in Britain. Of course they're doing it here as well, We had that news item a couple of weeks ago where they opened it back up, and because the coal industry is on its knees, a lot of the plants were bought up by foreign investors. Thanks for that, Mr. Trump. Russia. These two incidents overlap as part of a bigger setup, in my opinion. Roman Seleznev, the son of a lawmaker in the Russian state Duma, was sentenced to 27 years this week by a US court on Friday, and was actually kidnapped from the Maldives by US Secret Service agents and transferred to the US, where he stood trial on over 30 counts of cyber fraud. Go figure. The US District Court in Seattle found him guilty of credit card theft, resulting in $170 million losses for entities and individuals. Seleznev, who pleaded guilty to all charges in a written confession, compared the court's ruling to a death sentence. And the second part, a federal grand jury in Connecticut has returned an 8-count indictment charging a Russian national with operating the Kelios botnet, a global network of tens of thousands of infected computers, the US Justice Department said on Friday. Peter Yurachevich Levashov was indicted on Thursday by a grand jury in Bridgeport and charged with causing international damage to protected computer and wire fraud, among other counts, the department said in a statement. So, 2 Russians charged and jailed for computer fraud or hacking or malware. This is all designed to get the public thinking that the Russians are interfering with this country via computer, and will lead on to the Russians interfered with the election. See how they set it all up? They'll highlight those two and blame the Russians for everything. Montana, we go next. Although this is a global issue, but this is more to do with Montana. The Roman Catholic Diocese has filed for bankruptcy following a court ruling finding the church guilty in over 400 cases of child sex abuse. Church officials confirmed that the Diocese of Great Falls Billings is unable to settle the lawsuits that have been so far filed by 72 of the 400 victims of pedophilia at the hands of Catholic priests. This is the second diocese in Montana to file for bankruptcy over child abuse lawsuits in less than 3 years, with the total number of cases of sex abuse by priests, nuns and church volunteers reaching a staggering 760 victims since 2014 in Montana alone. Payouts on lawsuits are in the tens of millions. Attorney Timothy Kosnoff, who represents some of the plaintiffs, said it marked the 15th church bankruptcy in the US involving sex abuse claims. None of the accused in the cases are expected to face criminal charges for the sex abuse crimes due to a large number of the culprits now being deceased, and the church traditionally handles such cases internally, with discipline usually involving a priest being relocated to a different church. The Vatican has already paid out $4 billion in lawsuits for sexual abuse claims. And some people criticise me in emails about my going over the top against the Roman Catholic Church. I don't think I'm going over the top at all. I'd like to say a lot more, in some more explicit quite language, but we'll retain our composure. But you can't sit by, no matter what religion you are, and ignore the abuses of what's going on. When people, I may do a show, because of another show, a Sunday show, highlighting some of the atrocities of the Vatican Church, how they hunted the entity known as Jesus down, how they hunted other light workers that were sent here and burned them at the stake, how they burned at the stake alive the scientists that were proving their bullshittery theories for what they are, how they hunted down Mary Magdalene and killed her, how they've been hunting down the children of Mary, 2 of them, and the offspring of that, just so they can fulfill their narrative. How they've been involved in money laundering of vast quantities, how they've been involved in procuring all the gold for many of the Jewish people in World War II, how they procured a lot of the Nazi stolen loot in World War II, how they're worshipping to an entity that's got nothing to do with this planet, and quite frankly they're demonic. And then we come to these priests and nuns, how the Roman Catholic Church people in Britain were taking all the kids that were sent away during the war. They were supposed to look after them. They sold them and shipped them off to Australia. Massive amounts of cases. Big case in Ireland going on currently about nuns abusing, both violent and sexual, and then getting rid of people's kids for profit. A small child can't go into what's supposed to be the house of the Lord, the house of God, a place of comfort, place of safety, only to have some police bugger him up the backside. I don't think many people who listen to this show realise what that does mentally and spiritually. So when people tell me I go too far on the Roman Catholic Church, think again. They are the enemy to the people. A federal judge on Tuesday blocked any attempt by the Trump administration to withhold funding from sanctuary cities that do not cooperate with US immigration authorities, saying the president has no authority to attach new conditions to federal spending. And the US District Judge William Orrick issued the preliminary injunction in 2 lawsuits, one brought by the city of San Francisco, the other by Santa Clara County, against an executive order targeting communities that protect immigrants from deportation. The injunction will stay in place while the lawsuits work their way through the courts. Where are we next? As I mentioned this earlier about Trump and his climb downs, and I have to say it's not his fault. I want to make that quite clear. It's not largely his fault. But Trump has had to climb down yesterday and today and not include the wall, which was supposed to go across Mexico, southern American border, to save the country from going into a federal government shutdown. Now, US lawmakers have reached a deal to avert that shutdown after the White House backed off a threat to withhold Obamacare subsidies. The stopgap, and that's all it is, a stopgap bill announced last night, allows Congress an extra week to reach a final deal to fund the government through to September. Congress had until Friday to negotiate a bill to keep the government running. Democrats declared a victory after the White House agreed to continue paying the so-called cost-sharing reductions. They had refused to support the bill unless it allowed for an Obamacare provision that paid health insurance companies to help keep medical costs down for low-income Americans. The concession comes after President Donald Trump had earlier dropped a demand to include funding for his controversial border wall in the spending bill. Appears we have no oversight committee, doesn't it? None whatsoever. While they're playing party politics, Democrats declaring victory. You know, it's micro to the macro. Why is one of the richest and biggest and best, or as we keep hearing, countries on the planet operating week to week or even month to month? Could it be because certain presidents, under orders from the string pullers, go and waste 400 million on weapons on a false flag in Syria, or drop the biggest bomb in history on Afghanistan? Another 400 million wasted. For what purpose? It's not American freedoms, is it? Unless you like the freedom to inject heroin via poppy fields or want to sniff oil. It's the only reason we're in Afghanistan. So that doesn't apply, thankfully, to 95%, 99% of Americans. But we're still there, wasting trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars since 1981 on Middle East war. Yeah, it goes back that far. First Gulf War. It's 36 years ago and we're still there. That tells me, if I didn't know the background to it, that the military are incompetent. Because if you can't overrun a third world country with no nuclear weapons and no planes after 36 years, it's time you quit, isn't it? Or perhaps we're not the biggest and best army in the world. You can't have it both ways. How long is it since Saddam Hussein's gone? 5, 6 years? Why are we still there? How long is it since Bin Laden came back to life and was rescued in a helicopter 10 years after dying? It's ridiculous. This is why this country and its people have no money. World Police, my arse. Last night I was flicking through channels, something to fall asleep to, and I ended up watching something that was rather interesting. An interview by Anne Ravel, R-A-V-E-L, on PBS. It's worth watching. It's only half an hour. And she's a federal election commissioner, and her responsibilities was to, and the rest of the committee, was to oversee the election campaigns and ensure all the donations are legal. And yet she went live on air last night and stated that 800 million minimum in the last election was what they call dark money. Nobody knows where it came from. Now, the commission panel is made up of 6 people, as she described, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. And every time there is a major investigation, didn't matter who it was, one side or the other blocked it. It was stalled by block voting, as you need 4 votes to investigate any large donation. So if it was a Democrat, all 3 vote against it. So Republican, same thing. And she reported that the smaller amount donations were being investigated and actions taken against those people, the small people again. But when it came to the big corporations and organisations, block. Anything of a more serious nature was deliberately blocked by Congress members. This plays in maybe why Trump called the Senate in and not went through Congress. Think about that. But the actual extent of the dark money is unknown because of its very nature. And the Commission found that there's people or entities are setting up limited liability corporations solely for the purpose of hiding their identities to give money to election campaigns, which is illegal. 501c4s and 501c6s under the tax code are supposed to be social welfare organisations, and yet they're still giving money to campaigns. Again, these foundations that are supposed to be for the benefit of the people are going from the same clowns that are damaging the people. And she went on to say, so we don't know where that money's coming from. We also don't know the extent of how much foreign money is being implemented into our election campaigns. And the host said, are you saying that you haven't been able to investigate these things? No, we have not. We have had cases at the Commission where 97% of the money spent by an organisation is on political campaigns when they're supposed to be social welfare programmes. And she mentioned one called Carolina Rising. Carolina Rising was also a social welfare organisation, but they actually spent 97% of their funds on a Senate race in North Carolina. And on the night of the election at the Senator's campaign party, the head of Carolina Rising said, we did it. Yes, you did. You spent all the people's money again on clowns. But can they investigate it? No. Because Mitch McConnell installed 3 people to block vote. Her words. Should President Donald Trump choose to replace the federal chairperson Janet Yellen, rumours is she's getting an extension, we'll see. When her term expires next year, could well turn to someone close to fill the void. Speculation is building that a likely replacement to run the central bank would be Gary Cohn, director of the National Economic Council and Trump's closest economic advisor. Cohn is also the former chief operating officer at, wait for it, Goldman Sachs. It seems our government is being taken over by Goldman Sachs. If memory serves me correctly, if that is appointment is made, that's the fourth Goldman Sachs person he's appointed. They can't run their own bank too well. Never mind this country. White House launched a new hotline on Wednesday for people to report crimes committed by criminal aliens. But some of the callers instead are using the line to report cases of extraterrestrial contact and UFO sightings. That's classic. I love it. I'll say it again. How can you be illegal on your own planet? We're not aliens. Here's some, that's all the serious news. Well, this is serious, but it's a bit more light-hearted given some of the shows recently. I thought I would throw it in. It's funny, but like I said, it's not. This is what some of your tax money in America has been spent on. And some of them you'll find hard to believe. Some of the figures will anger you. Are your taxes used to put fish on treadmills? Yes, you heard it right. In 2016, the Institution of Oceanography in San Diego used a $560,000 grant from the National Science Foundation to force fish to exercise to exhaustion on treadmills. The exhausted fish were then given 48 hours to rest before hitting the treadmill again. Different oxygen levels were used as variables to test their progress and recovery. 560,000 to put mud skippers on a treadmill. True or false? Your taxes prove that gingerbread houses are earthquake proof. Yes, you heard that correctly. The answer is true. A $150,000 grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services funded a workshop called How Does the Cookie Crumble? The Oregon Museum of Science and Industry took gingerbread houses designed to be earthquake resistant and put them to the test on machines that replicated major tremblers. Participants got to take their sugary homes with them. Your taxes paid scientists to play with dolls. Yep. Researchers at the National Eye Institute and National Science Foundation did, however, conduct a $300,000 study to answer the age-old question, do boys or girls spend more time playing with Barbie dolls? Really? Do frat boys' brothers like to party? Yes. And scientists decided to study that on alcohol abuse and used a $5 million grant to study on the revelling habits of college students. The study revealed what anyone who went to college could tell you for free. Members of fraternities and sororities drink more on average than the larger university population. This is especially true on days of big sporting events. It boggles the mind. Where are we for time? Right, okay. We'll have a few more of idiocies. Your taxes paid NASA to teach religion to aliens. Yep, your tax dollars did help NASA examine how the world's religions might react when we make contact with ETs. The Centre of Theological Inquiry used a $1.1 million grant from the NASA astrobiology program to study potential reactions by religious leaders and populations to hypothetical future discovery of life beyond Earth, and how it could influence their beliefs about the origin of life. NASA also participated in an $88,000 study that examined the effects of global warming on wine in France. Really? A $3.5 million study. This is all your taxpayers' money, and you wonder why we have none. Was launched by the National Institute of Health to examine why half of Americans report being afraid of the dentist, with as many as 20% reaching the level of a serious phobia. Well, perhaps it might have something to do with the use of a drill boring into your gums and bone is why people are frightened of it, and also mercury and all kinds and crowns that cause cancer. Apparently 97% of people who get cancer have had what they call it, them posts, the crown posts procedure. But mercury in the mouth is enough. Was the another study for shady and bogus doctors to stay in business? That's true. Through the Medicaid, Medicare and CHIP programs, the federal government continues to pay $3 million to medical professionals who have been banned from public healthcare programs, according to the Congressional Budget Office. $3 million a year. Some of these people committed fraud, others performed unnecessary procedures to pad their invoices. At least 100 doctors were supposed to be removed for reasons relating to criminal charges, but instead they keep practicing and collecting our tax dollars. An experiment conducted at the State University of New York at Buffalo, which was funded by an $817,000 grant from the National Institute of Health. They've come up a few times now. It seems that company has far too much money, and perhaps we should shut them down and take the money off them. 817,000 did take a close look at, wait for it, primate saliva. The study compared human drool to that of a wide variety of apes, monkeys and their relatives in hopes of identifying when human saliva evolved into its current form. I kid you not. 817,000 to look at spit. I think I'd like to spit in some of their faces. Just a piss take. One of the priciest tax-funded boondoggles in recent memory involves a program intended to prove that man-made carbon dioxide could be captured from energy plants before it entered the atmosphere as a harmful greenhouse gas. So far, nothing has been captured except a bunch of bad headlines. The Department of Energy has already put $450 million into the project. Out of a total budget of $3.9 billion. The programme, which was supposed to be completed in 2014, is 6 years behind schedule and is currently stuck in the initial phase. 450 million to see if they can capture carbon dioxide from plants. It's taken them 6 years to do it. Okay, 6 years in jail for those people. On it goes, more waste. The Federal Railroad Administration coughed up $3.1 billion for California to build the bullet train. It's already there, it's just below your feet. It's not for us average everyday folk. It's only for the elites and the non-humans. The super train was supposed to move at more than 200 miles per hour, making the 520-mile trip from Los Angeles to San Francisco in less than 3 hours. Well, you can go from California to New York in less than 3 hours. So quite why it would take that long is debatable. The project has a price tag of nearly $100 billion. And this is the largest current public works project in the United States, but in fact it's not in existence. In 6 years, not a single track has been laid, and yet 3.1 billion of our money has been spent. Truffles and caviar, again, not for the average everyday folk, but we're paying for them anyway. The USDA used $34,210 in taxpayers' money to conduct feasibility studies, that's a nice one, on producing pricey truffles in the United States, which has so far been an elusive task. Yes, it will be. Nearly $52,000 was spent on studying the feasibility of value-added fish products, including herring, caviar. He won't test tilapia or anything like that, will he? Just a piss take. Here we go again. National Institutes of Health spent $1.3 million on Flowbots, Flobots, which are, wait for it, robotic flowers. Flowbots use a sugar solution that mimics nectar, which is used to entice bees. Really? Given they're all dying off, maybe these flowbots are killing them. Researchers use flowbots to study the behaviour of bees, which they say interact with flowbots in a fashion similar to how they interact with real flowers. And it takes 1.3 million to do that. National Science Foundation conducted a $450,000 study to determine whether or not dinosaurs could chirp and sing like birds. Nearly $500 million to find out whether dinosaurs could chirp. Who cares? The study concluded that despite what you might have learned from Barney, dinosaurs did not have vocal structure required to sing. Exactly. This country is going completely insane. 450,000, 1.3 million, 52,000, $34,000, 3.1 billion, 450 million. 3.9 billion, 817,000, 3 million, 3.5 million, $88,000, 1.1 million, 5 million, 300,000, 150,000, 560,000 on that pile of bullshittery. And you wonder why this country is operating on a week-to-week basis. Let's have an upbeat song. Hi all, welcome back to the second hour. Now you've all stopped laughing. It's funny in some aspects, but that waste of money is nothing short of scandalous. We're all responsible, myself included, because we've ignored this type of fun and games for far too long. And like any good thief who thinks they'll get away with it, they'll keep doing it more and more until we say enough's enough. You know, even that first hours was more sedate than some of the previous shows, certainly the recent ones anyway. There's enough in there that will get people raging, or should do. And this has been the great source of frustration for many of us as to why the general populace won't wake up. Well, if you believe some people, they'll tell you because 90% are synthetics or robotoids or mind controlled to a point where they're no longer in control of their vessel. Others will tell you 30% are programmed not to get it. But I think that number is now becoming increasingly clear is far too low, because it's right in our face now. All us classed as conspiracy theorists all them years ago, and even as far back as 2 or 3 years ago, we're not so much conspiracy theorists anymore, are we? Fact-based. All being supported. A lot of the stories, the Catholic Church, the priest abuse, the government corruption, the police brutality, the bogus wars, bogus weapons of mass destruction. The 9/11 has now reached over 50% of Americans who believe it was an inside job. And yet still we wait. Well, what are we waiting for? Well, we're waiting for people who really should be doing their own jobs to protect the American people, or protect their own country, not just America, Britain as well, and all the other countries involved. But they're neglecting their duty and kowtowing to the paymasters, who, funny enough, are rapidly running out of funds, ideas, assets, and in anyone's book, power. Certain actions that will follow fairly soon, hopefully sooner rather than later anyway, will erode that power even further. Certain filings mentioned in previous shows, the first phase of it went uncontested. They know they can't contest it, but that validates it. They also know if they do contest it, they haven't got a leg to stand on. Win-win. Phase 2 and Phase 3 is now underway. I don't know the timeline for it. I suspect it will be before the end of the year. Hopefully way before the end of the year. And that not only hampers them financially, but it also stops them bullying countries, which I mentioned earlier. Because certain individuals, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the other hidden bloodline families, Aldebrenis, Orsinis, etc., those connected to the Vatican Church, like the Mafia. For those who don't know, the Mafia is part of the Vatican Church, always was. The funds are funneled through the Vatican Church. Yet again, another reason why I dislike that particular entity. So, over the last year, and we're rapidly heading towards a year of Th&I. And that's kind of gone over quick. I think it's about 2 or 3 more shows before a year. And it started out a controversy, or controversy, whichever pronunciation you particularly like, with Neil Keenan et al. And we handled that rather well, so much so that Mr. Keenan had to backtrack and recant all his allegations about myself and the members being Illuminati agents. And we overcame that and have thrived. But we've also made a number of other big statements on these shows that more and more are now starting to see, perhaps not at the time, what we were saying was largely being correct. Now there's a post this week about Corey Good and David Wilcock done by Bill Ryan on the supporting of a rather bigger post done by Randy Morgans. We knew back in 2014 that Corey Good was not who he said he was. At the time, perhaps my name wasn't as well known as it is now, and it's rather difficult when you're taking on somebody who was as popular as David Wilcock. You don't get believed. So I dipped my toe. But what I wanted to do was kill stone dead the bullshit about blue avians. It is what it is. Bullshit. And some people may want to argue different. And that's fine. But the evidence is now increasing at a pace. Not only Bill Ryan has turned on Corey Good, but also Kerry Cassidy, of all people. Cobra stated he was reading from a 25-year-old book, his trips to Asgardia, or Hollow Earth. For those who know Corey from the Project Avalon, knows he was reciting Randy Kramer's story about going to Mars way before Corey Good, when there was a possibility of humans, slaves, soldiers, super soldiers going to Mars. By the time Corey came around, why would they send humans who have a chance to remember, despite the programming, and not send clones? Now most people think, oh, I'm not too sure about these clones. And that's fine. Because it's It's one of those realms where we think it's science fiction. It's much in the future. There's a post today about them building warrior robots. They've already got them. We've had them a long time. Anti-gravitic craft. They had back in the 40s. Some would even say further back in the 30s with the Germans. It's not new. MK Ultra didn't start with Langley et al. Started in Nazi Germany. So they brought over the same people to join the OSS. Very convenient name there. And started Project Blue Bird, as an aka Blue Avian. That name then changed into the more familiar MK Ultra. Project Blue Beam, Project Blue Book. Now this is what was covered in the Illuminati series by the programmer known as Farley, about colour coding, and blue is one of their favourite colours they like to use, which is why Corey et al., who is on the payroll, again something I've mentioned 2 years ago, near 3 now being confirmed, he was on the payroll of the agencies. On his own LinkedIn page, he tells you he's an FBI infraguard agent. Oops. Corey also admits in his interview with David Wilcock. Wilcock asked him, did you work for the agencies setting up and training trolls and shills for the alternative community? His answer was yes, because this particular person exposed that behind the scenes. He had to out it, and they thought they can control it. Now where was the outcry from the public at that? Where's the discernment? People keep going on about discernment, but isn't that raising a red flag? FBI agent works for the other government agencies, training people to disrupt the likes of this show and others. He was the trainer. So kudos to Randy Morgans. We have both known over a number of years about Corey Good. We also know an awful lot more about Mr. Wilcock. Corey Good is what he is, a liar and an opportunist who also likes to threaten people behind the scenes. Had a few members mention that, physical. But Mr. Wilcock was warned by multiple people. Bill Ryan, Kerry Cassidy, myself, and Shane, the ruiner, about Corey Good. He told everyone basically to F off, because Mr. Wilcock is also on the payroll. Oops. It's always nice to be proven right further down the line. I wish more people would listen at the beginning. So we've had a number of things that have been mentioned on these shows. This show was also the first to mention that Hillary was dying and subsequently died. Others followed. We also mentioned quite vociferously about Trump. He wouldn't clean the swamp. And that's going back to the Cosmic Voice days. So if people are looking for discernment and validity, this show's provided it. We've had to correct an awful lot of the utter bullshit that's been perpetrated through the alternative media. And I'm not the only one that's doing it. I want to make that quite clear. I've been amply supported by Randy Morgans and others. It's difficult enough trying to wake up and walk on a lonely path without despicable ego heads, money oriented, cabal oriented people acting like they're on behalf of the people when they're not. I'd sooner just admit they were out and out cabal like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers than have two-bit snakes like Good and Wilcock. And Mr. Keenan for that matter. So we had the Illuminati in the last week. We've had Peter there on. Seems the members really enjoyed that show. Peter, when he gets time, said he'd love to come back on. He really enjoyed himself. He apologised for he said, I didn't let you get a word in edgeways. I said, that's okay. I said I could spend 3 hours each week rambling on, so it's nice to hear a different voice now and again. So it was good. And pieces what we used to have all those years ago, 30, 40 years ago, a proper investigative journalist who looks at the information for what it is and then puts it out as it is. We've lost that in the media. It's all controlled now. No chance of having a proper investigative journalist in the media. Yes, they'll put out stories as they're doing now because the factions that own the media are throwing each other under the bus. Again, that was mentioned as being behind the scenes going back 12 months ago. I think more people are now seeing the value of what was stated back then, the infighting ongoing. We did say it was going to get bumpy. The layers of the onion will be peeled back, the unravelling. It's unravelled alright. Boy, is it unravelled. And then on Sunday we had the Illuminati 2. Thankfully it wasn't as graphic as the first one, but again it shows the levels of conviction that they will go to keep them in power and us under their control. It's kind of sad in many ways that people, weak people, I've said it many times before, only weak people control others because they're frightened. And the Illuminati are frightened because they're weak. It may be perceived as strength, but it's not. It's all part of the illusion. All part of the mask they put up, that they're the all-powerful. But only weak people control others. Because they're frightened. It's like the Draco. Weak. They feel they have to control everything. Why? Because they're not in control of themselves. The Illuminati members are not in control of themselves either. They set up a system where they all torture each other. Just to make sure no one falls out of line. That's living the whole life in fear. And yes, they've got many, many millions and assets here and assets there. It doesn't count for nothing, does it? And they're living the whole life in fear. Worrying if one of their brothers will suddenly break free of the programs and tell them what they've been up to. Worrying that the people get themselves a platform and crash their whole system down. This is why they spend 24/7 coming up with all kinds of plans, plots, schemes to keep us down. All based on weakness and fear. Not power. That's the illusion. Wouldn't it be nice if some of the Illuminati members came forward en masse? Because I can't see, once you've got 1 million or 10 million or 50 million, it just becomes irrelevant. Just pieces of paper, numbers on. It's when you're operating in the tens and the hundreds and the low thousands that life becomes a problem. Do you think their life is fun? Because I don't. Because I wouldn't swap their life for all the tea in China, drowning people, torturing kids, kicking the mother, see how the baby reacts. There's better things in life that you can throw 100% conviction behind. And it's something that they, or the ones on the fringes of the Illuminati, should really consider. You are a victim in this, as much as we are. And perhaps they can share their knowledge and escalate the takedown of the people at the top who are not interested in you or us. They never were. You're just another tool to them, a bit like the US military. Slaves, as Mr. Kissinger said. Yes, they think they're all powerful because they've got badges and all that crap. Mr. Kissinger told you what you are. Puppet slaves. But the US military has an opportunity to become the people's heroes. Real badges of honour. To rescue, look after the people and turn this planet on a better path. Is that not better soul growth than bombing kids into oblivion from 30,000 feet? Something they need to consider. And quickly, I might add. Right, we're going to go into some questions. We've got quite a few to catch up on. I'll see how many I can get through. Can you give me any advice concerning going to court to prevent me losing my driver's licence? 3 times I've triggered speeding cameras travelling at 50-mile-an-hour zones on the motorway. I presume this is the UK. I've paid the previous fine and took the points. Now unfortunately I'm at the maximum of 12. Can you please give me any advice to my defence so I won't lose my licence? Well, I'm not a lawyer, but as many people who have got far more expertise on legal things, if you've got a lot of confidence and belligerence, you can refuse to go to court. Do not consent. Technically there's no law. You've not injured or harmed. Ask, can you have a common law court? Would be my advice. But there's many cleverer people on the internet, John Darash, Tom Whittler, Anna Von Wrights, Judge Nader. He'll tell you the same. Don't consent to go into their dock. Maritime Law Sea Dock, where they'll give you documents. It's a collection agency, and it's for corporations, not people. I understand that the UPU is not going to save the human race from ourselves, but do you think it's possible they have neutralised and or removed the depleted uranium that Peter had discussed? Certain aspects of clean-up has been done. I can't give full details, but I know Fukushima was cleaned up within 3 days. They can babble on and issue fear porn all they like. We know that to be the case. Either way, it won't have the half-life of billions of years in our atmosphere. Some of the weapons that have been using recently, from what I gather, the half-life has been reduced down to months from what was billions of years. And this was one of the plans they were going to use in California, and also in the dome, on the Dome of the Rock, where they were going to flatten it. Probably blame it on Iran. And so, obviously, if they used the original type of weapons with the fallout, it would take many, many years for that to clear before they can build again. These new weapons' half-life is much reduced, weeks or months. Where are we? With all varying ways of bodies being slayed on our home planet, organ stealing and being placed into others, bodies blown to pieces, remains left to science, abortions, cryogenics, etc. The soul must still endure with even more patience. Cremation was an exception you indicated. Could we have just a touch more detail? My heart is against the embalming standard and feels that the organic decomposition of a body is the simplest coffin as a fertilizer helps the planet. This of course is if remains are whole, so but those of us who aren't so blessed is my concern. Yes, the cremation is the quicker way for the soul to depart. Soul departs when all the tissue, muscle, etc., organs, brain mass, all the softer bits are all gone, including the marrow. and what you're left with is the skeleton, the bones. Once the last bit of marrow tissue is gone, the soul then departs. It generally takes 12 months under normal circumstances of a burial. A cremation, it goes straight away, because all that softer parts of the body is all dissipated. I think I've answered all that one, so I hope that helped you. What is your definition, understanding of sovereignty? Of course, this is going to come up this year. The legal term for sovereignty is understood in jurisprudence as the full right and power of a governing body to govern itself without interference from outside sources or bodies. So, for argument's sake, a country becomes sovereign. It is then allowed, without interference, to govern itself. No foreign agents like we have in America. None holding the puppet strings. No shadow governments, state departments. The country is allowed to govern itself. Not like Iraq or Iran or North Korea or South Korea. They're all controlled by the paymasters. But when each country is declared sovereign, like it says, no interference from outside sources. So if every country, all 209, is declared sovereign, that ends the reign of superpowers, empires, Vatican churches, because they're not allowed to interfere with a sovereign entity. Now imagine if you go the next step and declare every person sovereign as well. Oops. But with sovereignty, if it says the power of a governing body to govern itself, comes personal responsibility. Do we have enough people operating under personal responsibility currently? The answer is no. There's too many give the power away to others, be it churches, governments, police. But if you become sovereign, nobody has a right over anybody else. So as a country, a little island called Vanuatu, who we covered on a show, it was about 2 years ago when you had the cyclone, as they call it in the Pacific. Once Vanuatu is declared sovereign, it has as much rights as the United States of America, or Russia, or China. They have their own rights. They will not need those countries. So the playing field of empires and superpowers is levelled overnight. Oops. It was our understanding that we live in a free will universe and that our sovereignty and our country was stolen through trickery of the Federal Reserve banking families. Not exactly. Technically we live in a free will universe. Doesn't feel like it. When you hamper and mess with genetics, so the free will goes to the hidden ones. Or we might think we're free. It's like Americans. We all think we're free. The land of the free. It's one of the biggest illusions on the planet. Because very few see the cage. When they're wasting billions and trillions of dollars of our tax money on wars and stupidity, that's not a free people. With a media that lies through its teeth. That's not a free people. That's propaganda. And the country was stolen long before the Federal Reserve came into being by secret societies. Is it a coincidence that Adam Weishaupt set up the Illuminati the same year America signed the Declaration of Independence? Do you not consider it may have been the same people? You've all seen the symbolism of Washington. It's not for the people, is it? Pentagrams, etc. Founding fathers weren't there for the people. Most of them were British establishment people doing the bidding on behalf of the Vatican. Vatican funded Columbus to come here. They knew it was here. That's another massive illusion of bullshittery that Columbus founded America. In fact, archaeological people have found out that there was people here 150,000 years ago this week. Oops. But Columbus, 600 years ago, found America. And he still teaches that rubbish in school. It's not exactly school. It's brainwashing. Where are we next? What will sovereignty look like when we have it returned to us? Well, it could be chaos for a while. Power goes with sovereignty comes personal responsibility. But some people will think that that's power, that they can go off the scale with their ego. I'm the all-powerful sovereign. You can't. I can do what I want, and you'll have to suck it up. No, you won't. You have to reserve by natural law. So all the responsibility goes back away from governments, away from police, back onto you. That's what sovereignty will look like. Now, if you're a lawful abiding citizen who doesn't want to harm, injure, steal or murder people, then sovereignty will be fine. But if you're not, and you have an ego problem, those people will have issues. So it's all down to personal responsibility. All down to the way Th&I operates. Caring and sharing for each other. Then we don't need control systems. We don't need a shoulder to lean on, like governments. Because if everyone's personally responsible, But why would you need government? Just wouldn't. But we've got a long way to go as people and the species before we reach that level. What will a transparent banking system function like? As we understand it, we are the value back in all transactions. Well, the mirror accounts, the black books that Mr. Keenan talks about, which is not the real one, and the other hidden books, and the black screens, and the time delay computers. Yes, Wall Street, 7 seconds. They're 7 seconds ahead, so they know what's going on before you. Rigged. All that will go away. No longer will the likes of Coutts Bank transfer money to Japan, $750 million, to prop up one of her relations known as Bush Senior, which got confiscated in 2011. So, no dodgy transactions, no, to be on topic from the first hour, dodgy election donations from foreign governments or foreign corporations, because all transactions will be live at all times and viewable. No operating the black screens. So that's what it will look like. What will happen with all the odious fraudulent debt? Will it be gone? If not, then are we not trading one master for another? Not necessarily, no. Depends on the intentions. You know, you could have, technically, if they had a brain transplant, the Rothschilds running all the banks, but in a clean and fair and transparent manner. Would anybody care if all the derivatives were stopped and all the theft of the mortgage securities? I'm not advocating for that, by the way, just to make that clear. I'm just playing devil's advocate. But we don't owe the debt anyway. No American technically owes any debt. The mortgages are done on promissory notes. The utilities you've been paying since 1930s are the government's responsibility, as are your food bills and all of the loans. You put people up as collateral, you are responsible to pay for them. So we don't owe any debt. How it will be handled is anyone's guess. Some people will argue we should have Nasara. I don't particularly care what you call it, but some sort of compensation in one way or another needs to be administered to the American people. All their assets should be taken off them, all of them. Every home, boat, car, vacation homes, office buildings, all of it should be taken off them, assets stripped, and put back into the country to provide free health care to Americans for the rest of their days. No more paying fraudulent insurance companies. The 19 trillion debt is the Federal Reserve's, not the American people, or the American government for that matter. Wasn't them who told to spend it. It's the string pullers again. They're responsible for the debt. And let's not forget the bank bailouts of our money. Let's not forget the 6.7 trillion spent fighting third world country like Iraq. Our money. Who paid for it? We did. Known in Europe, and also mentioned by one Mr. Neil Keenan, that all Americans are fat lazy bastards who need to get back to work. Quote unquote Mr. Keenan. We've paid for everything. But the people have not benefited one iota for the last 70 years. What has the superpower, America, the great at this and great at that, what has it done for the people? Part-time jobs, poor paying jobs. I used to do painting, home painting. I was getting more 15 years ago for the same job. 15 years later, the same job is cheaper. But food isn't, is it? Cable bills aren't. Phone bills aren't. This country and its people have been raped left, right and centre, and we need to be paid back in some form or other, whether that's free healthcare or something else, or an improved social security payments. I don't think people will matter which, as long as we're compensated for what's been stolen. If someone was, for instance, shot in a crossfire or murdered unintentionally, in your opinion, or according to the Levershot material, would that person then still have to drop a level? Yes, because they haven't completed their growth. As harsh as that sounds, that's how it works. And people will think that's wrong. There's many things wrong on this planet that will have to be corrected, but it also can be looked at in a different way, is that it brings strength. You've had the will on a soul level to get back up, go on your next journey and strive to go one step further and one step further. You could also play the victim and sink. Personal responsibility, personal choice. I've been hammered in my lifetime because of my outspoken views. Family members left, children left, grandchildren left. But I chose to stand up and fight and continue. Don't let the bastards grind you down. Others go into a shell and play the victim mode. I've been that person in my 20s and early 30s, and in the end I thought, this is not going to change unless I change it. So you gain an inner strength. And whilst it's been harsh in that lifetime, it may be a lot easier in the next one, despite dropping down a level. But it's like in life, they say, oh, that's a mistake. And people will point fingers, haha, you made a mistake, you made an error. They don't tell you when you've been right 100 times, but if you're ever wrong once, oh, people jump. But a mistake is a learning opportunity. So is it really a mistake? No. It's a learning opportunity for you to go on a different path. And whatever that may be. To do it in a better way. Right, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to have a music break as normal, and then we'll be back with some more questions. I've had this for a while. Hi all, and welcome to the final portion of tonight's show. We'll get into some quick fire questions. Where is the information on arrests and trials we the people want to know? Well, there's been enough on the mainstream media about arrest of certain lower level pedophiles. I think it's 3,000 arrests at the moment. We don't have lists, and I certainly don't have the time, so I hope that helps. Where are we next? It looks like Trump is showing the world he's not messing around like Obama did. Your thoughts? Trump had no say in the Afghan or Syria bombings, so he is not messing around. He also had no say in what's going on in North Korea either. On last week's show, Peter Ayres said Hitler was injured in a plane crash. I remember reading or hearing about this elsewhere. So Hitler didn't really die last year in September, or is a clone, or is she a clone? Two completely separate incidents, separated by about 5 years. The incident that Peter described, I was aware of at the time, and she was shot at also. So different events altogether. And yes, she did die in September, on September the 4th. And the double is not too well, and the clone is failing. Duncan O'Finian once said they knew who we were before we were even born. Who or what are we dealing with? Well, that's a very open-ended question. Certain ETs have the ability to read souls. Sometimes certain souls can't be interfered with. They can mess with them and try to throw them off path, but ultimately you can't destroy. And the problem they've had over the last 50 odd years is that a number of specialised souls has been coming in to fix things in this system. They know it, and we know it. So the control system is the Draco, although the Aldazani were controlling them, and the Abraxas. Then we had the parents, and the covens, of which Queen Elizabeth is head of one of the covens. And then we had the Illuminati. How much those individuals in the Illuminati know the real story at this point is debatable. I suspect they don't even know the regular listeners to this show, As everything is just compartmentalised beyond all belief. Nobody knows what the next person's doing, and then if they get familiar with the person next to them, the wheel gets spun. So suddenly you're operating with a different person who doesn't know what you've done, and you don't know what they've done. They don't know where they've come from or where they've been. All designed to keep all levels of the control system stuck in their own prison. Covens didn't know what the parents were doing. They were given orders, but they didn't know the reasons behind it. Parents were abused and bullied like the elders, the real elders, not the bogus Chinese cronies, the real guardians of the planet. They didn't know what was going on. Draco themselves were lied to. They thought they ran the show, but there was other reptilians who were worse. So yes, they have technology to know where that soul originated from and its history. Of course, if that particular soul was trapped here, as many who are left here have been trapped for a long period of time, with the memory wipes, they know exactly your whole history, that soul history, not the vessel, the soul history. Not as easy recently, given that particular program has been shut down since 2013/14. The memory wipes. So that's likely what Duncan was referring to. There's entities with technology that's way beyond comprehension, even to some of us in the alternative community have done many decades of research. We still learn every day something new. Is there any truth about the Philadelphia experiment where 2 crew members of the Eldridge travelled to the year 2137 and reported back that most of America was underwater and the population was only 50 million and 300 million worldwide? No, in my opinion. From what I gather, the bit I know is that did take place, but 2 of them arrived back in the 1980s. It was something like a 40-year loop, and certain generals who were young soldiers at the time were waiting for them to report back, and they did. The other fear stuff is likely to do with the Edgar Casey stuff, particularly in relating to America, and that prophecy was, along with other worldwide prophecies of doom and destruction, was ended in the late 90s. It's not only them that have the technology to change things. The UPU is supposed to be enforcing the peace treaty. In addition, the cavalry has arrived while the Rothschilds still operating. They're operating at the behest of the US military. Period. Once they see sense, common sense, and the illusion of the power of the Rothschilds, then the Rothschilds' game is over. Still we wait. Do you know anything about etymology? And if so, could you do a show on it? Words have magical properties. Yes, they're spells. That's why they call it spelling. You cast spells with words. In my opinion, words have been the downfall of man. Language. We've all done it, where we stood next to people from a foreign country and they're talking, and most of us, if not all of us, have thought, are they talking about me? Go on, admit it, be honest. Because it creates a fear. Words can also lie, confuse. Look at the English language. It's probably the most difficult to learn. I know Chinese is difficult with all those symbols, but in the natural language of letters, basic letters, the English words, where, it's about 4 different words for the word where. Where did I go? Where are you going? Did you wear that jumper? Shortened of we are. All very confusing. And that's the way it's designed. Double meanings. Now the etymology is the origin of the word. Now there's a book I refer to, or a place online where you can type in words and it tells you where it came from, where it originated. What you'll find is a lot of it started in the 1500s and the 1400s. Something changed on this planet at the behest of the Vatican Church again, where words changed, books changed. Yes, the Bible. As Org Teller says, Bible, bullshittery. Same thing. I've got a feeling more relates to Taurus the bull. Baby lion. It's those cats again. I told you, didn't I? I told you I don't like those cats. Or Babylon. Babylon is now City of London. Yes, there's a place in Baghdad, but it's transit. It's not fixed. The original Jerusalem was Constantinople. Oops. And then in the 1800s, it's a famous British hymn, and was Jerusalem builded here in England's green and pleasant land? Why would Jerusalem be building in England? Was it a case that the Roman Empire was passed the baton to the British Empire, even though it was still, in real terms, the British Empire was the sleight of hand, because everything got handed over to the Vatican Roman Catholic Church. Britain at that point was owned by the Roman Catholic Church since 1215 in King John and the Magna Carta. It sold all the land and the people. Full control to the Roman Catholic Church. So why would they write a famous hymn about Britain building Jerusalem? Or was that a prophecy? Was Britain built Jerusalem? Because it was Britain that created Israel. The Jewish, in inverted commas, were campaigning for their own land that didn't exist in the 1800s. They eventually got their own way in the 1919 by the Balfour Declaration, and World War II set it all up and facilitated it. Britain owned Palestine. Suddenly Palestine, divide and conquer, became two. Anyway, I've kind of gone off track, but that's a bit of a history lesson. But words is what's damaged man and woman. We used to have telepathy. You can't lie with telepathy. You can't cheat. So let's give them some letters and numbers and jumble them all up and put hidden magic into them where they don't understand. Consent. We sent the con. Government. Govern, control, ment, mind. Right in your face. And there's hundreds of thousands of them. If you look at it, any word, and seek the etymology, you'll find the hidden agenda, because it's in almost every single word. Look at the legal terms. Legalese means babble, undiscernible rubbish. But that's our legal system. Just justice in inverted commas. And you wonder why we don't have any, because what they're spouting is babble. Get more sense out of a 3-year-old child. Good question, but I'll see if I can find the one I read and just type in a word. What I tend to do is break the word down, split it up into two, as you'll find a lot of the time there's two words merged into one, bit like consent. Two words merged into one, and you find out the origins of where it all came from. What is your take on the new unacknowledged film due to be released in the next few weeks, uncovering the deep state and looking into free energy? I haven't heard about it. Apologies for that. But anything highlighting those two will help. Might wake some more up. Ending pedophilia is a great concern for many. The problem is complex and far-reaching. What is the best action to take to end it from the public domain that has the greatest impact? Keep getting the message out. That's something that may, more than anything else, break the back of the mind control on the masses. Appeal to them like I've done. I remember arguing with my eldest son. He said it was a pile of crap, that the church is interfering with kids and the military and politicians and the so-called celebrities. I don't think he'd be saying that now. It's an epidemic of epic proportions. And so it's one thing that can be proven because it's now been in the mainstream media, their source of truth. It's not ours, but it is theirs. It's been in their truth media. And then you say, well, you said we were wrong on that. You also said we were wrong on this, this, this and this. Perhaps you need to look into that as well. What is the purpose of Washington DC terror drills this week? Fear. Also to tell you who operates there. Operation Gotham Shield, aka Batman, aka Dark Elf. They are real and they are dangerous. And also to test how they can go about if they pull off a real one, sadly. Is Earth an experimentation centre instead of a learning planet? Yes, mainly. On so many levels. But if you have the right conviction about the self, you can turn that round and make it a learning planet. You don't need groups of people to do that. You just need you. Yes, I've been experimented on, but you know what? I'm going to turn around and shove it right up their backside sideways, because I'm going to learn from it, I'm going to gain knowledge from it, and I'm going to get stronger, and I'm going to come out of this system stronger than when I went in. That's how you take them on. Is dancing similar to yoga and then it can open up yourself to astral attack? No. No. Does the aurora borealis energise the moon and the sun? Not to my knowledge. I'm not saying it doesn't. To my knowledge it doesn't. Is evil an artificial construct created through human thought, and are we our own worst enemy? It's not artificial, it's real. Like I've said after the Illuminati show, each and every listener to this show has the potential to be just as evil as the programmers in the Illuminati, and each has the potential to be the highest being on the planet. It all comes down to personal choice. Sometimes your geographical location can be counterproductive. It all depends on where you were brought up. If you're brought up in a high crime area, you're likely to go down a life of high crime. Doesn't mean you have to. Again, that's your choice. Are we our own worst enemy? Yes. We've seen the error of our own ways, and like I said after the Illuminati show, if we applied as much conviction to end this control system as they do to keep us controlled, then we would end it within days or weeks rather than months and years. So yes, we are our own worst enemy. We know what's going on, but we still comply. We know our government is corrupt, but we still vote. We know there's people walking around in America and Britain who have pulled false flags on the respective soils, and we still allow them to walk amongst us to do more damage. So whose fault is it? You could argue they shouldn't be that way, but we could also argue, why should we be tolerating it? Answered that question. The frequency in my ears has increased lately. Any info on why this has ramped up and how much longer will it continue? It depends which ear. It just depends on which ear. If humanity fails to evolve again, will Earth reseed itself with a new species? Yes. I don't think that will take place. Maybe we certainly were in trouble as soon or as close as 2013, 2014. I don't think that's going to be the case now. If there is no government shutdown in a few days, where do they get the funds to keep going? Drugs. Simple as that. Drugs. And again, that's our responsibility, because we buy them. We being the general populace, buying pot, coke, and whatever other drugs they call. They're all supplied by the very people who control us. All of it. So imagine if everyone stopped taking drugs. Where would they go then? What would they do then? No more black budget programs. All this spying on the populace, be it America or other countries, it's all funded out of black budget money, which is weaponry, child trafficking, and drugs. I've seen many people in the alternative community doing high fives because they've legalised pot. That's fine if you want to smoke it, but you must realise with every joint you're putting more funds in the coffers of the agencies that control us. A lot of people won't like that, be saying that, but it's reality. That's where the money comes from. So we have a choice. Do we all stop taking drugs and harm their black budgets, or do we just carry on taking drugs and then complain when they're spending money left, right and centre on spying us, mind control, etc., etc.? Personal responsibility. Are Russia, Iran, Turkey and Syria the countries part of the countries agreed to help their national to have universal standard of living? I'm not too sure. I think I know Scandinavian countries were involved in that, but they're part of the problem at the moment, those Scandinavian countries, along with Holland, because they're all Germanic. Not the people, the ones in control, they're Nazis. How are we doing, such as earthlings versus evils that want to destroy us? On the macro level, we're doing extraordinarily well, given the amount of time that they've been in control, and given less than a decade or even a few decades at the furthest point, and how much headway we've made in breaking their system down. In essence, it's nothing short of extraordinary. On the micro level, some people will still say we're still struggling, but like I said in a previous show, it's all about perspective. You've got a roof over your head and at least 1 or 2 meals a day with clean water, clothes on your back. You're better than well over 50% of the rest of the planet. It's about perspective. There was a thing, a meme, where it said if you've got 7 cents in your pocket, you're better off than 59% of other people on the planet. 7 cents. But us in America can see our struggle, self included. I'm doing the same job 15 years later and getting less money than I was then. But again, you have to balance it out. Look at the way the African people are living, the Indian people are living, many of the rural Chinese people are living. Women going tens of miles a day just to collect a bucket of water on their head. Basically they spend all day just collecting water, where we have to go 10, 15, 20 feet and turn a tap on. So it's about perspective. Macro, we're doing extraordinarily well. I'm hoping in the coming weeks and months it will filter more into the micro. Where are we next? Do they provide the public with sci-fi stories in order to get some sort of consent? Some of it's consent, some of it's disclosure, some of it's fear porn. They have to tell you what they're doing. That's why Orwell was promoted. It's them telling you what they're going to do. But did the public react to it? No, not really. Not really until about 2009, 2010, which is roughly 26 years after the book, or even longer. 26 years after the date, 1984. That is where we fell short. We've ignored it for too long. We've ignored the totalitarian creep. Oh well, doesn't matter, we'll lose some benefits, and doesn't matter, we'll lose some job benefits or securities or safety. Doesn't matter that the pension's not living up to the inflation rate. Doesn't matter that a couple of judges who are bought and paid for in Florida can decide our election. Slowly but surely. Doesn't matter that certain schools are promoting Muslim rhetoric. Don't blame the Muslims, blame the people who initiated it. It doesn't matter that when I was a child we had 2 injections, and now the kids are having 40 in the first couple of years. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that thousands of kids got autism off vaccines. We'll still do as the school tells us and vaccinate our kids. You see who's the problem. You can argue all day, we can do whole shows, we've done many hours of shows of how bad they've been. But you also have to take into account our role in it, in allowing that totalitarian creep to get worse by the week, day, month, year, decade, before we actually do something about it. Doesn't matter that Mary down the road lost her house to foreclosure. It only matters when it happens to you. No, that's wrong. That's reactive, not proactive. They've been proactive in controlling us, and we've waited decades to be reactive. And even then, it's only 10-12% of the population, when it really should be 90%. If a person A kills person B to prevent person B from killing more than 2 people, does the so-called karmic law come into place? Yes, for both of them. Where are we next? How are we for time? What is the definition of giving consent by the various cosmic councils? Are the differences in definitions or viewpoints of how to interpret consent? Well, this plays into the last answer. We've consented to everything because we've ignored everything for too long. You should never have ignored the warnings many years ago. You know, I was telling people 40, 50 years ago about what was going on. I could see it. Everything was backwards, everything was upside down. What they're teaching was rubbish. You know, but slowly but surely people are now waking up with it. But I've no idea why it's taken us, we the people, this long. And this is part of the problem with the councils and federations and galactic this and galactic that. They see a populace who are happy with this control system because not enough are complaining. If you were an ET in the spacecraft looking at this planet as its people, would you interfere? Where's the demonstrations? Where's the public outcry? It's not enough, is there? And this is where the problem comes down to consent. We have consented to all kinds because we haven't educated ourselves to their word magic. We all sign contracts. We have no idea what we're signing. I said that in an earlier show. For most of us, they could put in page 13 on a mortgage document, this person's an utter retard and he's going to sign his house over us after he's paid all the bulk of the interest in the first 10 years and hand it to us free and clear. And we just sign it because we don't read it, because we don't understand it. That then becomes consent. It's also consent by complicit, by inaction. I've said to people about the pedophilia issue. Now you know it's been going on. If you go back to your ordinary life and don't complain, you are complicit in it. You are condoning, in essence, their actions because it's not part of your everyday life. You just ignore it. That, in an overview point of view, means you're consenting. Now, if you were asked the direct question, do you tolerate pedophilia? Your answer, everyone's answer would be no. That's fairly obvious, but they don't put it in those terms. They put bits out. They send some of their people out to go and talk to the public to see the reaction. They gauge reaction. Some of the whistleblowers are deliberately sent out just to gauge your reaction. If it goes too far, they pull it. Like the X-Files. Started waking too many up, so they pulled it. Like the series The Event. The last 2 episodes didn't make any sort of sense whatsoever. The second, The Event. The same with the second series of V. again, the last couple of episodes were all rushed, and it was not the normal ending, because too many people were getting it. We've consented to far too much for far too long. Th&I, the Silver Legion, was not pleased with the UPU. Did she give her reasons why? I don't recall whether she did those. I know she wasn't happy, but sometimes Th&I's I love Th&I, but she gets too angry at times and wants to wipe whole species out because a few of them have pissed her off. Whether she's totally displeased with the UPU, I have no idea. I know she wasn't pleased that they didn't contact her. It was one of the reasons. But maybe Th&I can come on the show one week. She has got an open forum to come on this show. She has had for the last 2 years. She's chosen not to come. She did try to get back with David Wilcock, Alfred Weber and Tolek, and all three gave her the brush off. So I think she's staying in behind the scenes for now, and we wish her well. You know, Th&I and Sunfire, those shows were groundbreaking in many ways and offered so much, and it's a pity that the two of them are not around as such anymore. Sad. I can't answer the IRS. That should have been for last week for Peter to answer. Where are we next? A week or two ago, a failed Cabal financial act resulted in a Fulcrum-style information release. The names of Illuminati leaders and senior minions were supposedly revealed. Who released this data? Who did they release it to? And what is being done about it? I will call them the Foundation people. They released it to every government and every agency, and what is being done remains to be seen as it stands. Any intel on possible false flags planned for this month, as it historically happens? A number. One of them is an EMP that will take out the internet and cable. So far, although there was fun and games on the West Coast last week, that type of event has been prevented or not taken place because too many people are aware of it now. Where are we next? Those were time-related questions. Apologies I didn't get to them, but because with Peter being on last week, and you know, it's the stuff he was saying was that interesting. You know, it's the background knowledge. I think people were aware of some of the stories, but not the levels of background knowledge and how it all interconnects, that Peter. So we didn't have time for certain questions last week. Why do so many people have vision problems and need glasses, often from a very early age? Because our eyes have been genetically messed with. Sunglasses don't help, and the atmosphere of pollution all adds up. Alright, I think I've gone so far now. Is Allah and Yahweh the same demonic entity? No. Has the event started this week? Not with a bang, but a stealthy, delicate whisper. Nope. The event has been ongoing for many, many months. That's why we're getting so much news. Is the discarnate being within our group that you mentioned benevolent? Yes, it is. And it doesn't need assistance. He's assisted us quite a lot with his abilities. Alright, I think we'll wrap it up there. So, no intel this week. I hope you enjoyed the show anyway. We covered quite a lot. And ultimately, like everything else, it's down to us what we can do on an individual and a collective level. The war on your mind is what this war is all about. It's not necessarily dropping bombs on your head like we're doing to the poor Syrians, etc. This is a war for the mind. We must put all the shields up and block them out and fight back each and every day. Not just every Thursday, because you get reminded of certain things for this show. At some point during it, every day, you should take time on how you can help not only yourself but help everyone else around you. Educate, educate, educate. Right, if you lead life in love and care, you will prevail. If you lead life in fear and anger, you will fail. Feel free for you to be the person you wish to be, not the person who conforms to what others want them to be. You are a multi-dimensional being operating simultaneously on many levels, and you are not here to conform. You are not here to be stifled. You are not here to be enslaved, and you are certainly not here to be abused or to compete with your friends, family or neighbours. You are here to be the best you can be and do so as the crown of creation. Now go out with the confidence of who and what you are and excel in yourself, and in doing so inspire others. The war on the mind continues. There was a famous war song back in the Second World War. I will leave you with that. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.